38 in your packet. 28.
So kind of the question there is it's whether you intended exception 5 to be a side or exception 6 to be a rear, or did you intend it to not do anything about rear and just sides depending on what it's next to, being single family attached with a greater setback if it's next to multifamily.
This is the thing you were talking about a little bit ago, right? Or no?
No, this is just,
Is it-
Melissa noticed if, basically,
Oh.
should exception 6 say rear instead of side?
So,
Oh.
question, I couldn't find anywhere that said ordinance number 678.
Okay, so,
What
Yeah, what ordinance are we talking about?
talking
Yeah.
about here?
that's a good question. I probably should have wrote that a little better.
Is it the changes we made to R2? When we changed the setback? To 5 feet? This is your, oh, okay, I didn't catch that. So yes, this is R2.
Is this wording directly from the,
Yes, I think it was intentional, so when we talk about exception 5, so it used to be 7 feet. And then we reduced it to 5, but then we said if it abuts R1, we wanted to keep it at that same 7 foot. But if it was a density equal to or higher than R2, then we would be okay with the 5 foot.
oh, yeah.
So if it's an R2 to another R2, or, but putting it next to, because this came up when we talked about that area up by the interstate.
Yep.
And the existing neighbors were concerned that, well, hey, when I moved in here, it was R1 and the setbacks were 7. Now you're going to 5. And so we said, all right, well, we'll keep it so that the setbacks are still the same, whether it's an R1 or an R2. And so I think that
I
exception
remember
5
that.
was intentional,
this
that it was
was
only for against
In
R1.
the areas where there are, what kind of homes are those called? Like,
Villas?
Villas homes, yeah, villa homes.
So at least that first one, I think, was intentional, that we wanted to keep the 7-foot setback against R1.
yes, so, yep, so ordinance 678 is on the screen behind you. What we're looking at is this column, the side yard setback. Number 6 applies to multifamily, where number 5 in the side yard applies to single-family detached. But it's all side yard.
Exception 6, pertaining to multifamily dwellings up against an R1, having an even bigger side yard setback of 15 would make sense, and I remember that being the intention, so I think that is
Yeah.
as intended.
Yeah, because if it's multifamily, it has to be 10 feet.
That says 15, right?
It would bump up to 15.
So it has to be 10 if it's against other multifamily, 15 if it goes to something else.
Right.
Okay. Just an ongoing effort to make sure what gets written
Yeah.
I
is
think
what
it
should be
was
there.
intended to protect the R1s that are adjacent to the R2s with, with the higher density, with the smaller setbacks, as we wanted to make sure we were keeping those existing situations no different.
So next one we're looking at is the R3. So in the permitted use table, you have multifamily dwellings 9 to 36, single family attached 5 to 36. do you care whether there is the lower end on that? Could it, as a permitted use, could they, I guess you wouldn't have one multifamily dwellings, but do you care about the lower number? I guess you would have, for single-family attached, you would have 2. Do you care, do you want that number to be 5, or don't you care about the lower end? We're just making sure things are accurate. Do you care about having a lower end number, or is the maximum number the one that's? So for example, the permitted use, single-family attached dwellings, you could not have a fourplex in the R3 because of the 5 lower end. You couldn't have 4 townhomes.
I guess being in an R3, I mean, if it's up to 36, I wouldn't mind if there was the ability to have a fourplex, but, yeah, I'm curious why 5 was, how we ended up with 5, but.
My guess is that if you go back to, so for example, in the R2, on the permitted use, you have single-family attached dwelling up to 4. My guess is it was just kind of carried over to, then R3 would be above that. But is that necessary to have the above number? You do have multifamily dwelling up to 8 dwellings specified as a conditional use in R2, whereas this has a, so then you have the 9 to 36 in R3. But does the floor matter?
I don't think we want to limit the floor as much. If you have what we don't want is a piece of ground that a fourplex would fit, but a fiveplex won't, and so then they can't build it, and a fourplex would certainly fit in that complex, you know. So I don't think we want to limit it to and there's no, if everything's being built and platted at the same time, there's no hindrance to that fourplex or townhouses or whatever it is, if they're all being built at, the same time. So I don't think I don't see the reason why we would not allow that, because you don't want to have to rezone it one plat or something like that. I could see a lot of more problems than I could see benefit, I guess.
So Patrick, what you're suggesting is, in that first one, to just get rid of the word, or to get rid of 9, and the second one, get rid of 5.
Yeah, it would just be
Last one,
up
get
to
rid of 5.
36.
And just say up to, yep. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah, if they want to put
Yeah, I think you want to
4,
put at least,
a grouping of 4 out there, fine, yeah.
at least this much, but not more than, no, just say.
It's our highest density zone, right? So yeah, no reason to limit lower density if they wanted to build it, yeah.
I have a question of the way it's worded though. How come it says single-family attached and it says single-family attached right away again? Is that a typo? Like where it says in your email, exception 5 states, 1, 2, 3, on the 3rd line down, exception applies to single-family.
Yeah, that should have continued on with the, I probably got distracted by a phone call or whatever, but it should be the individually platted lots, the
Okay,
second one.
because it says the same thing on the
Yep, so-
last line.
Yep,
and-
so the other 2 categories of single-family
Okay.
attached.
All right,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
I thought, well,
I just got
gal,
distracted
if you just
probably.
copied and pasted that directly from the ordinance, then we need to
Yep.
fix that. Okay, So are we good with that, with our
Well,
discussion?
I just wanted to see what your question is here. So you're looking at the single-family attached dwelling, 5 to 6, and that's a single-family attached dwelling, 5 to 6, individually platted lots surrounded by commonly owned space, right? So is the individually platted with commonly owned space, does that mean like it's an HOA or something? Or what does that mean?
Usually, so that, we have those kind of in commercial and industrial areas. You have them where they usually start off as rentals, some realtor puts them up. It's a bunch of row businesses or townhouses. Then the people that live in them really decide that, you know what, we want to be homeowners, not renters. So they plat them off. And so the house is a lot, and then the area surrounding it, usually they commonly own and take care of, and that's joint parking and everything else. So that's that situation.
Aren't those units next to the old library? Did that change?
Yeah, the brick apartments,
Yeah,
they did that.
yeah. Where they were.
They were rented and then they changed them into condos, yeah. Good? So we can go on to number 11. That's on this little half sheet we got.
Yeah, so as I was,
Yeah.
just kind of looking at the agenda here, I was looking at setbacks.
Turn on your,
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
I
that's
keep forgetting. We have a requirement in there that for buildings that exceed 35 feet, that we have to increase the setback. I guess that raised a question with me.
you
Is
mean
that
the height?
Yeah,
right?
so if the building's over
Yeah.
35 feet, in many of our
Yeah.
districts, we require it to be farther from the property line.
Mhm.
I guess it raised a flag with me. Well, does that mean everything has to be farther from the property line? Or is it just that portion of the building? Like, say you've got a one-story portion of a building next to a four-story, where the four-story is over 35, but the one-story is less than 35. Well, can that fall under the normal setback? And same thing with parking. Does parking have to be set in farther because the building's taller?
I remember when we originally talked about this. And, because I think you were the one who brought it up originally. And I think our intent was that it would just be
The tall
on-
portion?
just on the side where the tall portion was.
Yeah. So
So
like
like
the
a-
Performing Arts Center,
Yeah, that's the
that
example
was the one we
used.
talked about, yeah.
Yeah, let's say the high school was turned around and the theater part of the high school was next to houses.
Houses, yeah.
Yeah,
So I think the intent was, it was just that tall portion had to be set back farther, but the rest of the school or the parking associated with the school didn't necessarily have
or
to fall
whatever it
within that
happens to
setback.
be,
But
yeah.
as I was reading through this, it doesn't
It
say
doesn't
one way or the other.
specifically say that, yeah.
It just says the setback shall be increased too. Well, does that apply to everything else on the
Yeah.
property?
But I remember that that's pretty much what we intended. We should state it. Yes?
We'll come up with some language just so it's clear.
Okay, thanks. And so now we are at item number 12, building permits. Tell you the truth, there was so much else to look at, I never even looked at them. Am I building anything? I don't think so.
Grading on Aspen Boulevard, $4 million. They're still doing it, right?
For
Every time I drive by there.
Hmm.
Yep, that's
Yeah.
the development south of the golf course.
So are we ready to adjourn? Is there a
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second?
motion and second to adjourn? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, we're adjourned. At 8:19, 8:17 by that clock. That one there.